talking squats, and this is the essence of strength and conditioning, the squat movement. Now, when we think of squats, we often think of the two-footed squat movement. Don't forget though, this squat movement really covers a lot of other things, from one leg pistol movements, from lunging, etc. So we're going to look at the whole aspect of squatting. And why is it important that we're also talking about one-foot movements? Hinging with one foot, moving with one foot is really important. Why? Because most sports are done unilaterally. When you think about it, we don't actually do much sport on two legs. We tend to move from leg to leg, whether we're running, walking, skiing, playing football. So that's unilateral movement as well. But here, first of all, we're going to talk about the main thing about squatting. What I want you to address first of all is when you do squats, is what I tend to do is obviously look at the warm-up section for this video. That's somewhere else on our channel. But I want you to also address your footwear. I often see a lot of people doing squats with running shoes, for example, proper padded running shoes. It would be like trying to do a squat on a mattress on your bed. It doesn't make any sense. Better to just take the shoes off. And often when I do my first few sets, I tend to do them in flat feet and just have my bare feet for doing my first squats to help me to get more range of movement. Okay, we've addressed those fundamentals. Let's first look at the most basic squat. That is the air squat. We want to be comfortable, and therefore it depends on your own anatomy, but generally shoulder width are a little bit wider apart. Set up. Next action is I need to have some midline stabilization, which we'll talk also about in other videos. But that basically means get switched on. Don't be doing a squat when you're all wobbly and you're thinking only about your legs. There's a huge connection from the brain right through, and it's always important that you understand that movement is coming from the core out towards the extremities. So, switched on, ready to go with the core. I'm going to screw my feet into the ground. I get a feeling that I'm almost trying to turn my feet outside. Okay? But my feet are relatively pointing forward at this stage. I'm going to talk a lot during workouts about where the toes should be. But at this stage, I'm going to have them relatively direct, straightforward. From there, the first movement is going to be to break at the hip and allow the knee just to naturally, through that action, track slightly to the outside and come down as low as I feel comfortable without breaking at the waist in any way or having a rounded back. And we're trying to get below 90 degrees. I want to feel the tripod of the foot. I don't want to feel like my toes are lifting up. I don't want to feel like I'm just sitting on my heels. But I want to feel like I'm whole-footed at this stage. I am looking forward and I'm not getting into bad posture, i.e. ending up rounded, knees collapsing in, all these common faults we see in squatting. If, with an air squat, you have these common faults of rounding the back, of collapsing the knees in, of lifting the heels up, all these common faults, then you need to address these through our other videos in the mobilizing part. Okay, and there's a specific section that will look at ankles, knees, and hips, and back, etc. And that will help you to make the perfect squat too. So, why the air squat? Well, we use the air squat as a general assessment as to how somebody moves. Okay? The human body is set up and designed that we can make this position. If some doctor or somebody is telling you not to squat, then I suggest strongly you find yourself a new doctor. Because ask them, how then, doctor, do I get off the toilet seat? How do I sit on the toilet? It's a squatting action. All these actions are necessary, and we already know that it's only us in Western parts of the world that tend to want to sit on chairs, whereas everybody else tends to eat, talk to each other, converse, and go to the toilet in a squatting position. And these racers have absolutely no problem with backs, knees, hips, etc. Once you're happy that you have the criteria to perform air squats, then you can add load, speed, volume, etc. But don't be adding weight until you can actually do the movements necessary in the air squat. And that you feel quite solid when you do repetitive movements in it. For example, if you used the Tabata philosophy of 20 seconds exercise, 10 seconds pause, you could just do 20 seconds squatting, 10 seconds pause, 20 seconds squatting, 10 seconds pause. And if you're able to keep the form, then you're basically proving you have a good squat. So what comes next? Well, normally most people would say the back squat. And yes and no. The back squat invites people to put a lot of weight on the bar. So, I prefer, first of all, to use the goblet squat. And the goblet squat just has me using any type of weight. I can use a kettlebell, I can use a dumbbell, I can just use a plate. Okay? So if I take this plate here, and I hold it in front of me, and I come into a squat, it's very unlikely when we make a goblet style squat like this that anyone is going to be making any mechanical errors. In fact, it helps me because I've changed my center of mass to be slightly more forward, and that allows me to be more upright in my squat with my back. Okay? So, from this position, this allows for a more upright back, and it lets me set up into what is known as a goblet squat. With a dumbbell, it would just look like this. Goblet squat. Don't forget to make sure that the core remains switched on and that you have a good upright posture. We're talking now about the classic back squat, and I want you to be really confident in your mechanics and form with an air squat and a goblet squat before doing a back squat, because this is where we see the failing of form and mechanics, etc. And it is inviting problems because a lot of people with a back squat just lift too much weight too early. But let's have a look at it. So it's racked up. Imagine I've got 200 kilos on the bar. Okay, I'm going to set up my hands. This is my opinion. I like to be just wider than shoulders, quite narrowish. I don't hold the bar out here. And from this position here, I'm going to step in under the bar and set it up on the traps. And this is what we call a high back squat. So it's a high bar back squat. We come up, and then I step out of the rack. I'm going to just step a little bit further back than normal because of the camera. From this position, it's really important now to prevent problems with the elbows and the wrists, etc., that I'm not in this position here with my arms. But I'm pushing the bar into my traps, and the elbows are coming back to about 45 degrees. From here, I'm going to make sure the core's active, get the glutes firing, turn the feet against the ground, and from this position, allow myself to break at the waist as the knees soften and track slightly towards the little toes. From here, continue down until I feel an impingement, or I feel that I can't go any lower without losing and rounding my lower back. And from here, simply stand back up exactly the same way. Now, common faults. Driving too quick forward with the knees. Fault. Ending up coming too low for your mobility and the back, sorry, I find it difficult, rounds the back. Coming down, and in the bottom position, the knees collapsing as you try to drive up. Coming down and having a hip shift as you come up. These are just a few of the common faults we see. The clean back squat will see me in a good neutral position. I feel the whole of the foot on the ground, my knees slightly tracking to the outside, and then up. Don't track your knees out so far that you feel your big toe lifting up. To rack the bar, just come back. The rack, solid, and step out. The box squat is an absolute must-go-to exercise for everybody, and essentially for those that have injury-related issues. With a bar, without a bar, with a dumbbell, without a dumbbell. What we're trying to do in the squat is to avoid something known as the butt wink. The butt wink looks like this. It's where you see my hip dump underneath me and swing round. Okay, once again, that's a butt wink. There is always, in a squat, my argument, a bit of mechanics where the butt does move a little bit in this direction, but not as extreme as that. So what I can do is I can set up a box at a height where I feel I can get to without that happening. Maybe the box needs to be higher for you, and then you slowly start to bring it down as you improve the mechanics and your strength around this area. If you're able to brace the core with midline stabilization, which we'll talk about in one of the other videos, you'll find it easier and easier to get lower and lower without losing the mechanics of the squat. What I don't want you to do with the box squat is to sit on the box and then come back up. Mainly because when people do that, when we sit down, we turn off our glutes and we tend to slump. And now we have bad mechanics coming up. The idea of the box is just to give you a target that you lightly can feel, and then you come back up. This can be done with a barbell, with a dumbbell, with kettlebell. It's a fantastic exercise, and it's a great way to slowly build up your ability to get lower in the squat. Now, of course, there are many people who would turn around and go, I have heard you shouldn't squat past 90 degrees. Then that's quite strange, because we could go through many sports where the movement pattern goes beyond 90 degrees. But have you ever tried to get off the ground and not bend your leg beyond 90 degrees? Yeah, I'm going to look a bit stupid. The leg has to bend beyond 90 degrees for me to get off the ground. So don't have that as any type of argument. Please understand it's really important that we are able to make our maximum depth squat. I've already emphasized that it's really important that we have unilateral movement and we build strength unilaterally. So here's a fantastic exercise, the Bulgarian split squat, that I highly recommend. The problem is boy, does it hurt the next day, and a lot of people just don't like it. Why don't they like it? Because they can't lift loads of weight. Because we're using one leg, and the setup and everything is not so easy. A Bulgarian split squat is always best set up from down over. So what I mean by that is, a lot of people struggle with the positioning of this, but if you set up in the bottom position here, see how the foot's placed, how this is placed, how the finish position is. This would be my finish position. I can then come up, and I now know the distance from the box that I need to work in. So that's how I set it up. And you could mark the floor now. I can take something and say, right, this is where the foot placement is, so I know when I set up. There's lots of ways to do a Bulgarian split squat. I prefer the front squat with a bar. However, I'm going to show you with a dumbbell because it's much easier. I take a dumbbell in the goblet position, place my foot in my setup. I can then have the instep of the foot, and I'm going to drop onto my right knee, and now by forcing this foot hard against the box and lifting with this foot, I come up and down. Notice how the knee doesn't collapse in as I'm moving. It's stable and it's not going to the outside, which is quite common where I see people trying to drive the knee too far out. Really important to just stay neutral, and this exercise is fantastic for your build-up of unilateral strength. So now we're talking about technically more difficult exercises. However, with the front squat that I'm about to start on, this is my preferred barbell exercise over the back squat. And I prefer to coach the front squat before the back squat. Why? Because the weight is in front of the person, their back is more upright, they can't lift as much weight, and mechanically it's more challenging, and it really is the thing that strengthens the quads. So what is a front squat? Well, the main problem with a front squat is people cannot hold the bar. You have to be able to bring the bar into a position that requires a lot of mobility, and in the lats, in the shoulders, the scapula, and then in this position, once again, just everything the same now, tighten up, drop into my deep position, and up. Now, the main problem for most of you will be this grip position. With a lot of flexibility, you're able to maintain full grip. In other words, a full grip contact on the bar. A lot of you are going to find you're on fingertips. I don't recommend this and like this much, but it's acceptable to be in this position. What I don't like people doing is this, because this is now changing the mechanics completely into an internal rotation. Okay, so you see people do front squats in this position, and I really don't like this. If I really wanted something that's good, it would be this, the zombie squat. This here is a great combination of the front squat because it requires the torso to remain upright and a lot of movement, or a lot of extension in the thoracic spine to be able to balance the bar and not have it tip forward in this direction. The front squat is definitely one of the most difficult positions to get here. So here's a little trick that I can give you. These straps can be really helpful for people who struggle to get into the proper front squat at first, but want to use this technique, but feel that they always end up doing this because it's too uncomfortable. Take a strap and I'm simply going to wrap it around the bar. And now I have a great little extension that I can get into my front squat position. And even though I don't have flexibility, I'm able to hold the bar in this position here. And this could be anything, but this allows me to get a feeling now for doing a front squat properly. If you're wondering about how you end up getting the flexibility to get into this position, then watch our other videos to do with shoulder mobility and thoracic spine extension, and that will help you to actually get this position. We're going to do now the overhead squat. And for those that want strong abs, strong trunk, then this is the exercise you do. The problem is with the overhead squat is it is now technically the king of squats. It's extremely difficult for most people to do. They simply do not have either the mobility or strength to place a bar overhead in the correct alignment. However, if you do, it should look something like this. I would set up From a back position, slight dip and press. Now I have the bar above my head. At this point here, I want to break, track, and come down. And here, pushing the head through, pushing the bar to the roof, full foot, drive up. The biggest issue here is usually to do with the mobility in the ankle. It's not there for this movement, or in the shoulders, obviously, as well. To be able to do a sock press, for example, to be able to press it while in this position behind proves good mobility. And if you want to understand how you get the mobility to make an overhead squat, then watch our other videos, because this is one of the mechanisms that we teach and allow you to start making more advanced movements, because the overhead squat is without doubt the most challenging squat for anyone to do. So before we come to the end of squats, I have to stop and say, that's nowhere near the end of squatting, because the mechanics of that just keeps on going. We can do all sorts. We can add speed. I can add speed and explosive power to the squat. It's a squat. I can do my squat narrow. I can do a pistol squat, with or without weight. I can do lunges. In fact, when people, if I don't like somebody, then probably lunges is one way to ruin their following day. Lunge walking. So again, just going forward and making a lunge. But whatever it is you're doing there, it's all about the mechanics again. I can make it more difficult. I can lunge walk. With the weight above the head. I can take one dumbbell and make a lunge. There's no end to the diversity of the squat movement. It can be adjusted in volume, in load, in speed. Whatever it is you're doing in your training program, as an athlete, it has to be a big part of your life. That's squats.